out in the shed again. I'm still fiddling with my phone settings, so this is a wider angle, I think, which maybe it'll show more. I figured out what's happening with the top of my firewall not being symmetrical, and after careful measuring with plumb lines and things like that, what I figured out is what I suspected, which is this side of the body doesn't bulge quite as much as this side. So this bit here sticks out more like that. Only by a little bit, but it's enough to make a difference. It's not really enough that you can easily notice. Now that I've measured it, when I look at it, I think, yeah, that side looks a little bit straighter than that side, but I think that's just me sort of, because I know it's not straight now, I can see it. It's not going to make much of a difference. The body isn't symmetrical anyway, the doors are different shapes. I don't think anyone's going to notice, and it's not going to make any difference whatsoever to how the car actually drives. The important thing there is, of course, your suspension and steering geometry, and that's all correct because I measured all of that ages ago when I bolted everything to the chassis. So that's fine, but I'm looking at the fit of the doors at the moment. Because I'm going to use steel and it's a little bit thinner than the aluminium, I might need to close up a few of the gaps a little bit. That's not hard to do. What I'm checking here is the curvature, just with a piece of paper. But now that I've actually got the doors hung, this gap looks too big, so I may put in let in another piece of wood in the top here, just to close this gap up a little bit. The bottom's not too bad because there is the steel lip and the skin actually overhangs this bottom rail. So I probably only need about 1/8 of an inch thick piece of timber there, just to make that door gap a little bit smaller. The problem is if I do the same over this side, and I'm just going to put the camera down while I do this. I'll just stop this and then restart. Back with this again. I use the paper because it curves to the right shape. So the front of the door is correct here, and that'll have the right shape, but as I suspected, the back is misaligned. So between building the doors and actually hanging the doors, something has gone wonky. The chassis, this has come in a little bit. Once that's bolted down, that comes out about another 1/4 of an inch, which is correct. So it's fairly straight there. There's 2 ways I could fix this, I believe. One is put extra timber on the outside here, but it may actually be easier for me to have the door correct here, where the fit's actually not bad, although that bottom is still not quite right. And it would mean taking some off here, but then that makes this part of the door thinner, which I don't really want. So I'm not sure. I think what I'm actually going to do before I resort to remaking the entire door is glue extra timber on here. I'm going to build this out. So this edge all needs to come up, and then that needs to blend into here and into here, and then I can smooth it all off again and shorten it on the inside. So yeah, it's interesting. The doors aren't really load bearing or anything, so the fact that they're made from lots of bits of timber glued together isn't going to matter. It's really just a frame for the skin, and the skin's going to be steel, so that'll be nice and strong. The tricky thing is this is all shaped, so nothing's flat. So I need to sort of curve bits and pieces. The only other thing I could do maybe is, it is glued, but I can take the wood screws out. There's a screw there, there's screws here and screws here, and remake effectively this piece and this curved piece here. So this needs to come out a bit, and then this would be shortened off. That may be the better way to do it, because this does give me the right profile shape. It's just it needs to come out more. I think the first thing I'll try is actually shaping pieces to glue on here. If I can get them shaped accurately enough, once I epoxy those on, they become one solid lump. So that may be the better way to do it. But, yeah, I think it's definitely worth spending the time to get this right though. I decided I would try and fix the doors rather than make a new one, because I can do that with scraps of wood, and if it doesn't work I can always make a new one. I've still got some ash boards left over. I have glued an extra piece to the top of the passenger door. The shape of the passenger door is pretty close, so it doesn't really need much modification. I've just added this on here, and I will trim this to be all nice and neat and plane it down to get the gap I want at the top of the doors. And for the other one, it's a bit of a monstrosity at the moment, but on the bandsaw I cut strips off wood and have effectively laminated those together, because this is all kind of curved, so a single flat piece wasn't going to sit nicely. But I cut it into thin strips which made them flexible, and I was able to glue them all together, clamp them all together. The first lot I did overnight last night, and the second lot I put on at lunchtime today, so I'm going to leave those clamps there and let those dry overnight as well. I also realized I never actually got round to screwing this bottom, or this cross piece in, so I need to put a couple of screws through there just to make sure that's all nice and secure. And I did the same on the top of this one, glued on an extra piece of wood that I will then trim and plane to get exactly the gap I want at the top of the doors. The other thing I will do is use some of this 3mm steel to make the shims that go in here, so that I can space out the hinges. And it's probably going to work out that if I just mounted the hinges direct to the timber, I wouldn't have needed to make those. So I only figured that out afterwards. That made things a little bit too close, but that's okay. It's kind of built-in adjustability. So I would rather, because I know I can never build things 100% accurate or 100% perfect, I always try to build things so that I can adjust them if I need to. So having this gap here means I can adjust that. And if it's not 3mm, I've got 1.2mm steel, or various other things. I can stack up the shims to get the exact right spacing. What else? This is a new thing I got. This was on Trade Me, our local auction site. It was $15. So I thought, I'll take a punt on that. It's an older sewing machine. It's from the 70s, I think. And it is missing its power cord and foot controller, which it's actually probably going to cost me 3 times more than the machine cost to replace that. I think I can use a universal one, and you can actually buy the correct plug and cable, because they all use different plugs, from Amazon, I think. But the reason I got this machine is I do have another sewing machine, but this one is a walking foot machine. So that's what this is here. And if anyone's been watching my stuff for a while, they'll know that I'll give things a try. have done tiny bits of sewing in the past, but I'm keen to have a go at doing the upholstery for this car. And worst comes to the worst, I waste some time and some materials and I get someone to do it for me. But I'd quite like to give it a go and just see how I go with doing it. So I don't know what the original style was. Again, it's really hard to see from period pictures exactly how they were done. And any you see now will have been modified probably. I've seen them with sort of pleated seats on the bottom. Some just have plain seats. I don't know. I have got a pretty good idea what the seat back looks like because you can usually see some of that in the photos. But upholstery wise, there's the seat back. There are the seat bases, and there are the little bits of combing that go around the edges. So there's the one that goes around there and the one that goes around the top of the doors. It's worth me giving it a try. So the thing you need to be able to sew leather, as far as I can tell, is the walking foot. So this has that. I'm assuming the machine is heavy duty enough. If you're only doing small amounts, it should work fine. And I have already opened this up. So things that are broken, the handle's gone. That's what this was. It did come with the cover, which surprised me. I didn't know it was going to come with the cover, so that's good. And there are a few places where it's cracked. It's obviously well used, but I think everything is here. I do have a service manual for it. I looked that up online. The really cool thing is, being an older machine, it's completely mechanical. So it's all driven by cams. It's pretty impressive. And sewing machine mechanisms, kind of by their nature, because they are a mechanical mechanism, that it's all to do with movement, and it has to be strong, and they have to be well built. A flimsily built sewing machine won't work. So even an old one is probably still going to be in pretty good condition if it's not completely worn out. This one doesn't seem too bad. Apparently all the bushes and things on this are special sort of sintered metal, so I don't know that you really need to oil it that much. I need to look at the service manual for that. I think there was special oil that they used, but I don't believe they need a lot of oil or that kind of thing. I don't know what all these different stitch patterns do. It's very dirty. It needs a good clean, but as far as I can tell, it should work if I power it up correctly. What else can we say about it? I don't know exactly what that... Is that the reversing control? Like I say, I've got a manual for it, and I have the service manual for it, which took a little bit of searching. You'll find a lot of websites where they'll sell you the manual, which kind of annoys me because it's just a PDF file, and these websites don't own them themselves. They're just selling you an electronic copy for like $15 or 15 euros. But if you really hunt around, you can find the free copies. Yeah, I'll have to look it up and have a play with it and see if I can actually make it work. I have got my other sewing machine as a Singer. The motors in these machines, especially these older ones, are all pretty similar. They work in the same sort of way. It's just I think it's just a Triac based speed controller. So I'm pretty sure a universal controller and the right cable to plug into this will work. Like I say, for $15 it was worth a try. It cost the same in postage, so it was $30, I guess, if you count the shipping. But no, it definitely all works, and it's quite neat that you can just take the covers off with a couple of screws and see all the mechanism working. And you can see how the little cams, maybe, it's a bit hard to see, but when you move the little cam followers, you can see how it selects a different cam here. to give you all the different sort of stitching and the different stitch lengths. You can see it's all just cams and levers and mechanisms. Really, really neat things. There is an excellent series from, I think it was the 80s, called The Secret Life of Machines. And Tim Hunkin, he's actually on YouTube. He's remastered them all or re-uploaded them all. So you can look at his channel and see these original films. And it's great because he goes into the history of various machines. So there's an episode on sewing machines, and he goes into how they all work and demonstrates a big one, which is really excellent for showing exactly how the stitching works and how it uses the bobbin under there, and how the little arm, how it sort of pokes a thread through from the top. And this is why you have to set the tension correctly. It pokes the cotton through the material, and then the needle comes up and it leaves a little loop. And then the idea is that the bobbin here, this little hook, catches it, and it sort of pulls the lower thread over it, and it kind of locks the two together. It explains it really well to show how all of that works. But I think this will be a fun, it's another project, isn't it, really? I'm not going to take it apart. I'm just going to give it a brief clean and see that it all works. Like I say, I don't think that you need any sort of lubrication or anything on this. Oh, well, that's good. I can pull out the broken handle. Maybe I can fix that. But yeah, like I say, $15. It's worth a punt. Just playing with this little faff machine a bit. I'm trying not to do too much. I actually broke my little toe. I accidentally kicked the shower door and thought it was just bruised, but no, apparently it's broken. So I'm just taking it easy. But this is a nice, easy job I can do without having to move around much. I was just checking over the sewing machine, and I was thinking I'm not going to bother trying to clean it up or anything until I get the controller and the power lead for it. And I've ordered those just from China. It's just a straightforward motor in these. There's no electronics as far as I can tell. So a modern electronic controller should work. I believe the original controllers on these would have been a rheostat, but a modern triac-based controller will work fine. I just need to figure out the wiring. It's a 3-pin plug. It looks a little bit like a modern IEC type plug, but it's not. It's a little bit different. And I believe one of the pins should be common between the motor and the light bulb. The other one is just 230 volts to the bulb, and one will be power to the motor. I believe that's how it works. Otherwise, when you use the speed controller on the foot pedal, your bulb brightness would change. So it should be pretty easy to figure out how this is wired up. I did take the bottom cover off, just to have a look inside. Someone had put grease on these, and I don't believe these are supposed to be greased. I think even if you need to oil the machine, it takes very, very little amounts of oil. And I believe this uses sort of sintered bushes throughout. So I don't even know that it really needs oiling. It doesn't need regular oiling as far as I know. But I removed all the grease off here because these are nylon gears and it's not supposed to be, I don't think it needs grease on them. And I've just been giving it a little bit of a general sort of cleanup under here. It wasn't too bad, it was just a bit dusty. And I'm just using either lighter fluid, which is naphthalene, or isopropyl alcohol, just to clean it up really gently. Everything seems to work, nothing seems to be broken. I did remove this cover. It actually had a casting date on it, which was 1978. So that kind of gives the date of the machine. Again, I just cleaned up in here with a cotton bud and a little bit of alcohol. I will clean up this bottom plate, it's just grimy. It's just never been cleaned. So things like this where I'm not worried about oil, washing oil out of it, I'll just use a little bit of engine degreaser, works fine, just in a spray can. Anything like that will clean it. What else? The controller and things should be on the way. Yeah, I'll just give it a basic cleanup, and effectively all the motor does, the motor's just directly driving the mechanism, so you can check the mechanism by hand. And it was a little bit sticky when I first got it, but just working it a little bit seems to have freed it up. Everything seems to move fine. The motion's really nice. You can get all the covers off it, so you can get in there to clean it. It's just dusty. So I've got no reason to believe this won't work. I do need to look up this. I believe this is for doing buttonholes, I think. This one here is just your needle position. And as I mentioned, it's all mechanical. So as you move that knob, you can see the needle moving. This is the different sorts of stitches. And I believe it's just straight 1 to 4. And then you can feel it going onto a different cam. There we go. And those are the different zigzags. And that, I'm assuming, is the buttonhole. So it's pretty straightforward. These ones I haven't quite figured out yet. I'll need to actually look in the manual to understand what these are. But again, it just selects different cams and this releases it. I'm just going to keep cleaning it up, see how it looks. I think I've figured out why this machine was so cheap and why it was probably thrown out. The switch is broken. So this is the switch. And it's actually, the plastic's just got old and broken off at the base. So the switch doesn't work. So I need to figure out some sort of replacement switch for it, I guess. The good thing is now I've got the wiring all exposed. I can figure out which pin goes where and measure which one goes to the bulb and that kind of thing. So hopefully I can find something that'll fit. It shouldn't be too hard. And this sort of shows the drive system in here, how it's got a, it's a belt, but with little metal links on it. So it's almost like a chain. It's quite interesting, the setup. It's just a, it's got old grease and stuff in it. So I'll keep cleaning it out. And yeah, hopefully, I imagine if you can get the proper switch, they're going to be ridiculously expensive and I'd have to get it from overseas. So I'm hoping I can find something suitable. These are a bit like old-fashioned lamp switches by the looks of it. But I'll trace out the wiring and basically see how it's wired up and what sort of switch is going to be suitable. So I think I've gone as far as I can go on this at the moment. This is the switch. Definitely broken. It was working when I got the machine, although it did feel a little crunchy, so I suspect it was actually gone. And then when I took it apart, that was what let it all actually fall apart. So I don't know if it was actually working. It's stuck in the on position. And I figured out how the wiring works. There's the switch. This is the power that comes in. I'm guessing they're just 230 volt phase and neutral. It seems to be switching both. And then there's another pin that goes to the motor. So these 3 wires go off to the motor, and that'll be coming from the sort of variable supply, I guess. I think that's how it's going to work. I took all the measurements off the switch. I'll see what I can get. Hopefully I can get something that fits in there. Like I say, this looks like just an old school lamp switch, and often with these kind of things you find they're kind of standard. There'll be other things with similar dimensions. A lot of these things are actually kind of fairly standard sizes. There was something recently I had to buy that was kind of the same. I can't remember what it was now. I was looking at it, and you search online. Oh, it was the door locks, the locks for the car. So those sort of latches are all fairly standard sizes. So I'm hoping I can find a replacement switch. If I can't, I can always wire something up. I can make it work. But I'd like to keep it as original as possible. I've just been cleaning up some of the other bits and pieces. The plastic bits and pieces I just clean in a bucket of warm soapy water. I've just been cleaning the dust out of it. I've cleaned up the little clutch mechanism here. I have it on wooden blocks at the moment, so it's okay upside down, nothing's hitting. But unless the motor's burned out and I've got no way to really test it at the moment, I don't see why this machine won't work. It should be fine. So the other thing is, I think I mentioned it, these machines have this extra foot. They call it IDT. So I don't know if that's exactly the same as a walking foot, but it kind of does the same thing. It's an extra foot that sits on top of the material and helps pull it through. So apparently you can do leather on these machines. Not too thick, I'm imagining, because it isn't an industrial machine, it is just a home machine. But these were well-built machines. Everything's metal except for some of the covers. So I think with the appropriate needle, I've got no reason to think this won't be able to sew the sort of leather you want to do for a car. So if it works, I'll give it a try. And the other thing worth mentioning is I'm sort of perched on an old bar stool, just so I can rest my foot, so I'm not standing up the whole time. And sitting on the stool at the bench working on this reminds me of when I was a student. So I work in software. That's what I do. Well, I'm more a manager these days than anything. And but I've always been interested in electronics. That's how come a lot of my projects are electronics based. So when I was a student and when I was at university, I worked as an electronics technician. So I've done a lot of electronics sitting at benches in my time, and this kind of really reminds me of that, sitting perched up here poking around with this electrical stuff. The next day, I spent some time trying to find replacement switches, and you can buy these, but they're not cheap. Easily 4 or 5 times what I paid for the whole sewing machine if you try to get an original one. And these used to be available. Even J-Car used to have double switches like this, but I just can't find them anymore. It says they're discontinued. You can get single pole ones easily enough, but not double. But a bit more hunting around, and it turns out this is a really common failure on these switches, the plastic breaks. And somebody had online the files for a 3D printed version. So since I've got a 3D printer, I printed one out, and that seems to work. It's a little bit sticky still, but I think it'll free up. I'd like to say that was a nice simple job. The printing was easy. That took no time at all. Reassembling the switch was a real pain in the neck. There's a couple of springs in there, little metal pieces that have to go the exact right way up. It took me a long time to get it reassembled, but it seems to be working now, so I'm going to put this bit back together. I'm still waiting for the controller and things like that, of course, so I can't actually test it yet. Well, this is somewhat disappointing. I got it all back together and measured it with my meter and made sure it all worked, and screwed the covers back on, and tried the switch, and it immediately broke again. So I think it's just a weak point on these. When you around the switch, the neck of the switch is very thin, so very thin plastic. So when you fit the switch mechanism, there's not a lot of room there, and it's quite easy, I think, to put a bit too much sideways force on it, and it just breaks the neck off that switch. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll probably either look for a different sort of switch that can go in there. Probably I'll just use a simple toggle switch in there. I'll just make a little plate and just a double pole, double throw toggle switch and wire it into that. And then if somebody wants to fix it in the future with the proper switch, or if the proper switch has become available cheaply, it's easy enough to replace it, to put it back together like that. But yeah, that's really disappointing after spending all that time on it and just having it break again. But yeah, I did find a film on YouTube talking about these machines and restoring them, and the guy on that film mentioned that in most of these machines that he services, the switches are quite often broken. So I think that's just a weak point on them. So back to where I started with a broken switch. But you can sort of see how thin the switch is, the plastic around there. So I think what I need to do is see how much space there is. It may be possible to get some sort of latching push button double pole thing in there, but I doubt it. There's not a lot of space inside there. So, and then when this is in place, I'm not sure how much. This kind of goes in like that, and there's a gap underneath there. So I need to measure that height. That's how much room I've got to fit a switch. And then I can poke the wires through here and solder the wires on this end, or use a little terminal block, because these are nicely terminated wires, and fix it that way. It's a nice day again today. It's actually the start of a long weekend, so I'm hoping to get quite a bit done on the car. But once again, I'm standing in the middle of an almighty mess. My sore foot has recovered pretty well. I've just been taking it easy, so I'm back into car stuff at the moment. And of course, when you're busy, you don't notice if something hurts until it gets a bit later in the day and you're about to stop and you realize things are getting a bit painful. So I think I'm going to stop soon, maybe have a bit of a cleanup. The sewing machine, I think I mentioned I'd repaired the switch, and as soon as I put it back in, it broke again. It's definitely a weak point on these, and I gave up trying to get one of these switches, and I'm not going to pay it was about 4 times as much as I paid for the entire machine just for a switch. So I wired in my own toggle, double pole, double throw toggle. I 3D printed some little plastic bezel type things. So the casting on the underside of this actually has a rectangular recess, which meant I was able to 3D print a little flat piece like this that fitted into that recess, so this won't rotate. This top one can rotate a little bit. It's just held in with that nut, but the switch can't rotate, which is the main thing. So that should all work fine. Obviously, I can't tell until I get the foot controller and the power lead for it, which are on the way. But I have given the machine a good clean up. And unless the motor's burned out, which I have no reason to believe it is, it should work fine. It should work quite well. And I did go through the controls. I kind of know what most of the controls do. It gets quite tricky with some of these extra special stitches because you can actually select multiples of them. I can't remember which ones it is, but some of them you can select 2 at once and it gives you even weirder stitch patterns. Oh, and I think I've just jammed it up. Okay, maybe those aren't the 2 you're supposed to do. So I think it may be a matter now of taking the top cover off and unjamming that. Yeah, I've jammed it up somehow. Oh, there we go. So I'm going to put that away. I still need to clean the cover, but that's enough about the sewing machine. Onto the car. So I did glue on extra pieces onto the doors, and I've basically spent all day trimming those off and reshaping the door to get the fit much better. I also planed the top here. I can't remember what the gap is here, 7/30 seconds, something like that, seemed about right. I use a drill bit, and I'm going to use the same gap around here, and the door now fits much better. You can sort of see the piece I glued on, and that all worked really well, but it's made a massive mess everywhere. I was doing the sanding outside because it's a nice day, but there was just enough wind that everything in here is now covered in sawdust, which is a little bit annoying, so I'm going to have to clean up soon. You can see all the bits I cut off. This is the extra, and you can sort of see how I laminated it so it would bend around the curves, and just glued thin strips together and then trimmed it back. And what I'm doing at the moment, the passenger door fits really well, but I'm just using my Shinto file. Let's try this side. And what I'm doing is I'm making the inside of the door flat. So by filing across like that with the rough side of the rasp, this thing works so well. I think it's my favorite woodworking tool now. And the reason for doing that is so that when the doors are finished and I put the trim panel on, they'll sit flat. That's basically all I'm doing there. This door fits pretty well. You can see up here how it's not flat, so if I try to put a panel over that, it's going to need to bend in a weird way, so I'm just going to flatten it out a little bit. So between the file and the belt sander, I think I have worn out another bearing in my random orbit. I think this must be, I think I'm on the 3rd or the 4th one now, so I'll have to replace the bearing in that again. So I'm just going to finish this up and put that back on. I still need to play with the shims. Yeah, you can see the sawdust everywhere. That's the problem with woodworking, it's very messy. I may need a little bit of extra shimming on here. I've got 3mm shims in there. That sets the door gap pretty well. I'll get all of that set up, get the doors fitting really nicely with the body, and then I'll figure out the locks on the back. But it's probably enough for now. All cleaned up, which took a little while, but the fit of the doors is much better now, and the inside of them is much flatter, so it'll be easier to line those. I still need to make the shims on this side, just to get the gap around the front of the door correct. So there needs to be enough of a gap there that you've got steel wrapping around that way and steel on the door wrapping around that way, and you want them close but not touching, of course. This door's a bit inwards. And the doors, of course, have a lip on the back, so they overlap the body at the back and along the bottom edge. that's looking pretty good. I'm not sure what's happened to my aluminium angle, and I also still need to look for some solid rivets to rivet some of these pieces together, but that's coming along pretty well. And I'm not going to worry about this slight extra curve on the body on that side compared to this side. Nobody's going to notice. So that's where we're at today. I'm still working on the doors. I decided to make the little spacer plates. So I've just made the first one, and then normally with things like this I run the random orbit sander over them, but I forgot it's broken. So I've stripped that down. It definitely needs a really good clean, but yeah, this is the problem. This is the main bearing. It's totally seized up. So it's probably just full of muck. I'll get that out of there and I'll pop the covers off it and see if I can give it a clean, because that might be enough to keep it going for a little bit longer till I can get a replacement bearing for it. But as I say, I think I've replaced the bearings in this 3 or 4 times already, and I'm pretty sure I've had to replace this springy rubbery thing as well. But it's done pretty good duty, this little random orbit sander. It's lasted a long time. So if it finally gives up the ghost now, I can't really complain. That's definitely a bearing that's had a hard life. Like I say, I'll give it a clean out. That might be enough to get it going temporarily until I can get the new one, but it's not even crunchy. It doesn't even turn. That's how bad it is. But in the ultrasonic, let's see if that frees it up. Just a little bit of a diversion. It's a nice day, and since I'm on dog watching duty and they were getting bored out of their tiny little brains, I've come for a walk to the beach. There's Carpety Island over there, and they're just relaxing with a drink, which Milo's about to spill. But look what we found. I'm always on the lookout for bits of bone. I just put them in the garden. One day I hope to find an entire skull, but I've only ever found bits of them. But today we found this, which is, I'd say it's sheep. I don't know. It's the end of the spine anyway. That's quite interesting. It's just at this stage where the cartilage hasn't rotted away yet, so it hasn't fallen apart. So it's all in one piece, which is pretty cool. So I think I'll keep that. I might wire it together or something and then put it up on the shed wall. And the dogs are now knackered because they've only got tiny little legs, and they were just having a big drink. So I think it's time to head back home. It's the end of the long weekend and I'm just finishing up on the Riley. Didn't quite get as far as I'd hoped, but still making really good progress. So I've started playing with making the little pieces of metal. These are going to go at the edge of the doors, and also there'll be a strip along the bottom. And this is so that I've got somewhere to wrap the door skin around at the bottom and at the back. And it also provides sort of the thing that stops the door going too far in. So that's what actually sets the position of the door. And this piece, I actually had to uncover the wheel there, the wheeling machine, because it's easy enough to put curve in it this way, up and down, but I also needed a little bit of shape in it because, of course, it's not flat, it's all compound curves. So I put just a tiny bit of shape in there to get it to sit flush against the timber. But that'll be how the door fits in. At the bottom here, it doesn't actually touch this piece, and I think that's correct. And the reason is this section of the chassis here through the middle is actually flat. This bit, you can probably just see the bend from sort of there to about there. This is flat, but the bottom of the door isn't. So if we look at the original door skin, it's a bit hard to see, I'd have to put a straight edge on it, but it's actually curved all the way around. There isn't a flat bit in there. So I believe the bottom edge of the door sticks out just a little from the chassis rails. So that'll be the shape. Because of course, if you look at it from the side, this is all curved anyway, and then it's flat here because the chassis rails are flat. So I think that'll be correct. The door comes down. There is curve to the bottom edge of the door, but that means it isn't up hard against this wooden piece, but it is up hard against the back here. At least I think that's how that works. So I just got as far as making that first piece. That's 1.2 mil fixed steel, which seems about right. Here's a little piece of it. Of course, this skin's been unfolded, and it's also all rusty, but that seems to be kind of the thickness they used in there. You can see it's actually rusted out. That's why the skin wasn't used, but down here it fits pretty well. And I'm going to use 1 mil steel for the actual panels because that seems to be what they used. So I think that's right. I'm going to leave this part of the strip fairly wide, and it's going to be screwed to the timber with countersunk screws, and I can stagger them a little bit. So instead of just being a line of screws, you can offset them a little bit, which I think will give a little bit more support to this, a bit more strength. It's not like you've got a line of screws there, and as this hits, it's going to want to bend around those screws. So I think if you stagger them, it'll even that out a little bit. A couple of original cars, but not all of them, which is interesting, have little tabs that stick on here, steel tabs that sort of stick out like that, to provide a stop on the inner face of the door. But of course those tabs will get in the way as you get in and out of the car. So they definitely don't all have that. This is one of these things where there's differences. And I figured out the overlap of the skin based on the clearance of all my latch and lock mechanism. Basically, I figured out what gap I need to go in there, and I made these blocks. They're 5/16, 8 millimeters. Seems to be the right gap between the back of the door and the pillar, and then that means if I've got a 1/2 inch flange, it just covers all of this. So that seems to be about right, sort of between a 1/2 inch, 3/4, something like that. So I'll figure out exactly what I need at the actual time. If I measure this skin, it's just a little over 1/2 inch, I believe, because you have to remember that the timber frame would come up to here. So if you measure to that edge to there, it's about 1/2 inch. So I'm definitely in the right ballpark. So that's the first one of those done. What I will end up doing is I'll make that piece, I'll make the bottom piece. I need to get some countersunk stainless screws to screw it into the timber. They don't have to be slotted head screws though, because you won't see them once the door skin's on, so I might cheat there and use crosshead screws. Don't tell anyone. And I will make the bottom piece, figure out where they need to attach to the timber, and then I'll actually weld this corner together. I'll TIG weld that corner, so it's one piece effectively. But I'll wait until I've got both pieces made and effectively screwed in place so that I can accurately scribe that line and mark it and weld it. And then those will be attached to the door. That's the plan anyway. But it's about 4:15, I think, in the afternoon. It's a really nice day here. We took the dogs, or I took the dogs to the beach just for a bit of a break. We found an interesting bone. Final thing, I think, for today. I've cleaned up the sewing machine, cleaned up the cover, just waiting for the foot controller and the cable to plug for it. And this is this spine I found. It's either a sheep or a goat spine, I think. Quite interesting. quite solid. So I don't know what I'll do with that. I'll have to put that up somewhere, I think. It was an interesting little find.